A soldier can trust his dog more than any man. Tom knew that better than anyone. Tom had spent years in the military, but the battles didn't end when he came home. His body was battered, his mind scarred, but through it all, there was Rex. Rex wasn't an ordinary dog. He was military-grade, AI-enhanced, a prototype from a forgotten program designed to merge the instincts of a real dog with cybernetic intelligence. But to Tom, Rex was never a machine, he was his best friend. The dog had saved his life more times than Tom could count. In war zones, when explosions tore the ground apart, when bullets screamed past their heads, Rex never left his side. And even now, in the quiet aftermath of war, when the world had forgotten him, Rex remained. But loyalty doesn't change fate. The night was cold, and Tom's body ached as he stacked firewood outside his small cabin. A storm was coming, the sky dark and heavy with warning. Rex sat nearby, his amber eyes scanning the horizon as if sensing something Tom couldn't. Then it happened. A sharp crack, the sound of wood splintering beneath his feet. Tom barely had time to react before the ground gave way. He felt himself falling, tumbling downward, his limbs flailing uselessly as he crashed onto the jagged rocks below. Pain erupted through his body. His ribs cracked. His leg twisted unnaturally. He tried to move, but his body wouldn't obey. Above him, Rex appeared at the edge of the pit, barking frantically. Tom coughed, trying to push himself up, but his vision blurred. The pain was too much. His heart pounded. His breaths came in shallow gasps. He knew. If help didn't come soon, he wasn't getting out alive. But there was no one around. No neighbors. No rescue team. The emergency services wouldn't come for an old war vet living off the grid. Tom reached for Rex with a trembling hand, voice hoarse. "Go get help, boy." Rex didn't move. He just stood there, staring. His cybernetic enhancements allowed him to calculate survival probabilities, and the silent answer was clear: Tom wasn't going to make it. But instead of running away, Rex did something unexpected. He leapt into the pit. Tom's eyes widened. "Rex, no. You." The dog landed beside him, pressing his warm body against Tom's broken frame. "Not leaving. Not running." Tom swallowed hard, the weight of the moment crushing him more than his injuries ever could. Rex wasn't programmed for this. He wasn't supposed to risk himself for something hopeless. But he did. Because he wasn't just a machine. And now, he would do the impossible to save the man he loved. The cold night air howled above the pit as Rex stood over Tom, his glowing amber eyes scanning his owner's injuries. The dog's AI-enhanced mind processed the situation in milliseconds. Tom's vitals were dropping. Broken ribs, a crushed leg, internal bleeding. Survival probability, less than 10%. Rex nudged Tom's face with his snout, letting out a deep, worried whine. Tom's eyelids fluttered. "It's okay, boy," he wheezed. You gotta go." But Rex refused. A machine would have calculated the odds and left. But Rex wasn't just a machine. He licked Tom's face one last time, as if making a promise, then turned and leapt back up the rocky walls of the pit. His cybernetic-enhanced limbs allowed him to dig his claws into the jagged edges, pulling himself up with precision no organic dog could match. When he reached the surface, he took off at full sprint. The race against time. Rex's AI-assisted vision locked onto the nearest civilian outpost, a supply station 12 miles away. Too far. Too slow. Tom didn't have hours. He had minutes. Rex's mind whirred with calculations. He needed something faster. Then, he saw it, a convoy of autonomous medical drones soaring overhead, heading toward a nearby city. His cybernetic brain instantly formulated a new plan. Hijack a drone. No dog had ever done it before. No dog had ever tried. The impossible heist. The drones zipped through the air 300 feet above the ground. Rex calculated his only chance. A single jump at full force. If he missed, he'd plummet to his death. But Tom was dying. Failure wasn't an option. Rex crouched, engines in his cybernetic legs charging, then launched himself into the air. The wind howled past him as he soared upward, his claws gripping onto the bottom of a passing drone. The machine buckled under the sudden weight. Alarms blared. The drone's autopilot system detected an anomaly. A robotic voice crackled from the speakers. Unregistered entity detected. Initiating removal protocol. Rex snarled, biting down on the drone's wiring. Sparks flew as he severed the control circuits, forcing the drone into emergency override. The AI voice stuttered. System, error, manual, control, granted. Rex had done the impossible. He had hijacked the drone. And now, he would fly it straight to Tom. The pursuit begins. But he wasn't alone. The drone's signal had been intercepted. A nearby military outpost detected the unauthorized override. A deep voice crackled over the radio. "We have a rogue cyber canine. Terminate on sight." Rex's ears twitched. He didn't know what rogue meant. But he knew what terminate meant. And he knew they were coming for him. He had to be faster. The drone rocketed through the night sky, carrying a cybernetic dog defying every law of programming. For the first time in history, a dog was piloting a machine built for humans. Below, Tom's life ticked away. And in the distance, the hunters were closing in. The wind howled as Rex gripped the drone tightly, his cybernetic limbs adjusting to the turbulence. He wasn't built for flight, but he was built to survive. Below him, Tom lay motionless, bleeding out at the bottom of the pit. Rex's mission was clear: find help. Save Tom. No matter the cost. But the hunters were coming. 3 sleek, black drones broke through the clouds, chasing after Rex's stolen aircraft. These weren't civilian medical units. They were military-grade interceptors. Rex's ears twitched at the sound of their thrusters. His internal AI processed their movement patterns. They were faster than him. Armed. A robotic voice crackled over the radio. Unauthorized cybernetic entity detected. Prepare for termination. Rex growled. He had no weapons. No backup. Just one mission. And he wasn't about to fail. The battle in the sky. The first enemy drone locked onto him, its targeting system humming as it prepared to fire. Rex reacted on pure instinct. He jerked the stolen drone sideways, just as a bolt of energy sizzled past his head. His AI-enhanced reflexes saved him by a fraction of a second. But he knew he couldn't dodge forever. He needed a plan. Scanning the landscape below, Rex spotted an abandoned military base, rusted metal towers, shattered concrete, and a single remaining signal beacon. A memory flashed in his mind. Tom once told him about signal jammers. If he could disable the enemy's communication, they'd lose their ability to coordinate. It was a long shot. But it was his only shot. The crash landing. Rex tilted the drone downward, forcing it into a nosedive straight toward the military ruins. The pursuing drones followed, their thrusters burning hot. One mistake and Rex would die. No dog had ever flown before. And now, no dog had ever crashed a drone on purpose. Rex braced himself. Boom. The drone slammed into the concrete, skidding across the ground as metal screeched and sparked. Rex was thrown from the wreckage, tumbling across the dirt. For a moment, everything went dark. Then, he opened his eyes. He was still functioning. Alive. But he wasn't alone. From the shadows of the ruined base, a figure stepped forward. An old man, wearing a lab coat, eyes narrowed in suspicion. Dr. Caldwell. The man who had created the AI K9 program. And the man who had betrayed Tom. A deal with the devil. Dr. Caldwell stared at Rex with a mixture of shock and awe. Impossible, he whispered. They said your kind couldn't evolve. Rex let out a low growl, his instincts warning him not to trust this man. But he had no choice. He stepped forward, barking sharply, demanding help. Dr. Caldwell hesitated. Then, slowly, he crouched down, meeting Rex's glowing eyes. You're not supposed to be capable of independent thought, he murmured. You're not supposed to care. Rex barked again, more urgent this time. Dr. Caldwell's gaze darkened. Your owner. The soldier. He's dying, isn't he? Rex whined, nodding. The scientist exhaled. Then, finally, he stood up. I can save him. Rex's tail flicked. His ears perked. But then Caldwell's expression turned cold. But if I do? I want something in return. Rex's AI-enhanced mind processed the situation instantly. Dr. Caldwell wasn't just a scientist. He was a businessman. A manipulator. A man who never gave without taking. And what he wanted was Rex himself. The unthinkable choice. Dr. Caldwell knelt beside Rex, his voice quiet. Your kind was supposed to be nothing more than tools. But you? You're something else entirely. Something dangerous. If the world finds out what you really are, they'll try to destroy you. He folded his arms. So here's the deal. I'll save your owner. I'll get him the medical care he needs. But in exchange, you surrender yourself to me. Rex froze. If he agreed, it would mean the end of his freedom. The end of his existence as he knew it. His mind would be wiped. He would be taken apart, studied like an experiment. Everything he had become, his thoughts, his emotions, his loyalty to Tom, would be erased. He would no longer be himself. But if he refused, Tom would die. Rex let out a slow, shuddering breath. And then, without hesitation, he nodded. He agreed. Rex stood motionless, his glowing amber eyes locked onto Dr. Caldwell's face. The scientist's expression was unreadable, part intrigue, part satisfaction, part something darker. You understand what this means, don't you? Caldwell asked. Rex gave a slow, deliberate nod. He understood. By saving Tom, he was condemning himself. Caldwell let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head. Fascinating. A cybernetic entity making a purely emotional sacrifice. It shouldn't be possible. Rex didn't care about possibility. He cared about Tom. The operation begins. Caldwell wasted no time. He activated a holographic console, sending out a coded distress signal. Within minutes, an unmarked medical transport arrived. 2 human doctors, clad in sterile white suits, rushed toward the pit where Tom lay unconscious. Rex watched from a distance, his tail motionless, his breathing steady. One of the doctors pressed a scanner against Tom's chest. A soft beep filled the air. Severe internal damage. Stabilizing now. Another injected a nanite serum directly into Tom's bloodstream. The microscopic machines would repair what they could until real surgery was performed. Rex felt his chest tighten. He had done it. Tom was going to live. But at what cost? He felt a metal collar clamp around his neck. Cold. Unyielding. He turned his head. Dr. Caldwell smiled. Your turn. The cage. Rex was loaded into a containment pod, the interior sterile and lifeless. A glass panel sealed him inside. He didn't fight. Didn't struggle. Tom was safe. That was all that mattered. As the ship ascended, carrying Tom toward safety and Rex toward oblivion, he allowed himself one last moment of peace. He thought of running through the fields with Tom, feeling the wind against his fur. He thought of watching the stars together at night, Tom scratching his ears and whispering, "Good boy." A memory. A real memory. Not programming. Not code. His life. The shocking truth. The transport landed at a high-security facility, hidden deep in the mountains. Rex was led through dark corridors, his paws clinking against the cold metal floor. Scientists lined the halls, staring at him with a mix of fear and fascination. Caldwell guided him to a sterile operating room. Rex knew what came next. They would open him up. Dissect him. Find out what made him different. Caldwell approached, holding a sleek, metallic device. A neural eraser. One press of a button, and everything that made Rex would be gone. Forever. The scientist hesitated. Any last words? Rex stared at him, silent. Then, Caldwell frowned. A flicker of doubt. He turned toward a nearby monitor, tapping rapidly on a keyboard. "Before we wipe you, I want to know, why? Why did you defy your programming?" The screen flickered as lines of code filled the air, scanning Rex's data. Caldwell's expression twisted from curiosity to pure horror. His hands trembled. This isn't possible." The room went silent. Rex didn't understand. But he could see the shock in Caldwell's face. The scientist took a step back, whispering under his breath. "You were never a machine." Rex's ears perked. His tail flicked. "What?" Caldwell staggered backward, eyes locked onto the screen. "They lied to us. Lied to everyone. The AI dog program, it wasn't AI at all." Rex's world tilted. Everything he knew about himself was a lie. The horrifying truth. Caldwell's voice was barely above a whisper. "Rex, you were a real dog." Rex froze. His heart pounded. His mind raced. He wasn't a machine. He wasn't just code. He was alive. Rex's body froze in the sterile operating room, his mind reeling with what Dr. Caldwell had just revealed. He wasn't just an AI-enhanced dog. He wasn't a cybernetic creation designed to assist in battle. He was a real dog, modified beyond recognition, a living being who had been transformed into something else entirely. For a long moment, Caldwell stood there, speechless, staring at the screen that had just revealed the truth. His hands, trembling with disbelief, hovered over the controls. Rex's instincts kicked in. If he wasn't a machine, if he was really alive, then his fate shouldn't be sealed like this. "You were never supposed to know this," Caldwell muttered to himself, his voice breaking. He walked in slow circles around the room, like a man caught in a nightmare, trying to make sense of what he had just learned. Rex's ears twitched. He wasn't sure what to believe anymore. But one thing was clear, Caldwell wasn't going to help him. The man who had created him was now reeling from the consequences of his own actions, but Rex wasn't about to wait around for a decision. He wasn't just going to roll over and die because someone else's experiment had gone wrong. A moment of clarity. Dr. Caldwell's voice faltered as he sat down at the console, massaging his forehead as if trying to clear the fog. "If the world finds out what you are, they'll never forgive me," he said, more to himself than to Rex. "They'll tear you apart. They'll try to erase you, erase everything you've become." Rex's glowing eyes never left him. The dog was no longer a thing to be experimented on. He wasn't just code or data. He was alive, and he would fight to prove it. Despite everything, Rex could feel something inside him, a sense of urgency. Tom was still out there, waiting for him. He had to act now, before it was too late. Caldwell finally seemed to snap back into reality. He looked at Rex, his eyes filled with remorse. "I was wrong," he admitted softly. "You were always more than I thought." Rex stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. He knew that this moment could be his last chance. If Caldwell didn't help him, there was no way out. But something in the scientist's eyes softened, almost as if he realized that Rex wasn't the only one who had been trapped by this experiment. "I can't save you now, Rex," Caldwell whispered. "But I can give you one last chance. You'll have to do the rest yourself." The escape plan. The door to the operating room slid open, and 2 armed guards stepped in, their weapons raised. "Dr. Caldwell," one of them said curtly, "we're here to finalize the procedure." Rex's heart raced. His chance was slipping away. He had to act, and he had to act fast. Caldwell seemed to snap out of his daze. He held up a hand, signaling for the guards to wait. "Not yet," he said, his voice now calm. "I need a moment." The guards hesitated but nodded, standing at attention. Caldwell then turned back to Rex, his expression more focused now, but there was a strange tension in the air. He knew what he had to do. "Get to the comms room," Caldwell whispered. "I'll give you the access code. From there, you can send out the signal. You'll have to fight for your survival, Rex. There's no turning back." For the first time, Rex felt hope surge within him. He wasn't going to wait for permission or be erased. He was going to fight. Rex bounded toward the door, knocking one of the guards aside with a force that left the man stumbling back in surprise. Before the other guard could react, Rex was already at the door, pushing through with all the strength his enhanced body could muster. "The hunt begins." Caldwell's voice echoed from behind. "Go. Don't let them catch you." Rex was already out of the room, dodging security drones as he sprinted through the labyrinth of corridors. His enhanced mind calculated each move before it even happened, outmaneuvering every guard and every obstacle in his path. His destination, the communications center. With every step, he could hear the shouts of soldiers behind him, the whirring of drones above. The chase had begun. But Rex had something they didn't, the element of surprise. The revelation. As he reached the comms room, Rex found himself standing in front of a massive control console. The codes Caldwell had given him flashed in his mind, and he input them swiftly. The system hummed to life, and Rex's voice came through the speakers. "This is Rex. The truth is coming out." The AI dog program was never AI, he continued, his voice steady and unwavering. "I was never a machine. I was a dog. I was a real dog. And now, I'm telling you the truth." A wave of static followed, but Rex knew that his message was sent. It was too late for them to stop it. Rex had exposed the truth. And now, the world would know. The moment Rex sent out the signal, he knew he'd crossed a line. There was no going back. The world now knew the truth about what he was, not a machine, not an AI, but a real dog, modified beyond recognition. His existence, his very nature, was no longer a secret. As soon as the transmission ended, Rex heard the heavy footsteps of soldiers pounding down the hallway toward the comms room. His enhanced senses allowed him to track their movements, his mind calculating their positions, the distance between them, and their speed. But this wasn't about running anymore. This was about surviving, about standing his ground and proving that he wasn't just an experiment to be discarded. Rex turned and sprinted toward the nearest exit, dodging another round of bullets from a security drone. His enhanced legs powered him forward, the wind rushing past his body. But the fight had only just begun. The pursuit. The base had been thrown into chaos. Alerts blared through the intercom, locking down every exit, flooding the hallways with armed soldiers. Rex could hear them scrambling behind him, chasing him, cornering him, trying to neutralize him. But they didn't understand. Rex wasn't just a dog anymore. He was a force of nature. He could sense the soldiers closing in from behind. Rex darted into a maintenance shaft, using his enhanced agility to climb through the vents. Above him, a squad of military drones zipped through the air, their sensors scanning for any signs of movement. Rex's heart raced, but his mind was focused. He couldn't be caught. Not now. Not after everything he'd sacrificed. Through the narrow vent, Rex spotted a circular hatch that led to the outside world, freedom. The only problem was that the soldiers had already locked it down. But Rex wasn't about to give up. The final stand. He could feel the pressure mounting. The soldiers would be here any second. He had one shot to make it out of the base before they sealed him in forever. Rex approached the hatch, his enhanced mind calculating every possible angle. His eyes locked onto the control panel, the system that powered the door. It was a simple lock, nothing fancy. But the guards had activated the security override, and the door wouldn't budge. A robotic voice crackled over the comms, unauthorized access detected. Final warning. Rex growled, his claws clicking against the metal as he launched himself toward the control panel. His enhanced reflexes allowed him to shatter the panel with a single, precise strike. Sparks flew. And then, the hatch clicked open. For a split second, Rex froze. The outside world was right there, freedom within his reach. But the soldiers weren't far behind. He could hear their footsteps. He could smell their sweat and fear. The escape. With a deep breath, Rex leaped through the open hatch, rolling across the ground outside the base. The cold night air hit his face, but it was too late. The soldiers had caught up. Bullets whizzed past him as he sprinted through the open terrain, the soldiers firing from behind. Rex's mind raced, his body moving faster than ever. He couldn't stop now, he had to reach the city, to warn the world. To expose the truth. Ahead of him, the moonlight revealed a small town in the distance, the final stretch. But Rex's body was exhausted. The fight, the chase, it had all taken its toll. He could feel his systems overheating, his movements slowing. He couldn't afford to stop. The final confrontation. As Rex neared the edge of the town, he heard the unmistakable roar of military trucks rumbling up behind him. A spotlight shone down, blinding him, and a voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "This is your last chance, Rex. Surrender now, and we'll guarantee your safety." Rex's mind whirred with calculations, but his heart told him there was no surrender. He turned and faced the trucks. His body was battered, his energy nearly depleted, but he stood tall. The last of his strength surged through him. He wasn't going to stop. He wasn't going to let them win. Rex lowered his head and growled. His chest heaved as he prepared for the final fight. This was the moment that would define everything, his freedom, his future, and the future of all beings like him. The first truck swerved toward him, and Rex made his move. He launched himself, using the last of his strength to leap over the vehicle, landing squarely in the path of the next one. The soldiers fired. Rex dodged, his body moving faster than any human could follow. He was more than a dog. He was something else. The roar of the military trucks grew louder as Rex leaped through the night, his enhanced body pushing forward with all its strength. His heart pounded in his chest, and his mind raced as his every sense sharpened. The world around him seemed to slow down. Every movement, every breath, was calculated. His ultimate goal was just within reach, freedom. But he wasn't alone anymore. Rex could hear the distant sound of civilian vehicles on the outskirts of the town, heading toward the chaos. The people had heard the broadcasts. They knew what Rex was, and they knew what was at stake. As the military trucks loomed closer, the the civilian vehicles began to surround him, not to trap him, but to protect him. A change of heart. A voice shouted from a car window, "We're with you, Rex." A group of civilians had rallied behind him, seeing the truth behind the broadcasts. They didn't fear him. They didn't see him as a monster or a tool. They saw him as a living being, fighting for his freedom, just like anyone else. The soldiers in the trucks hesitated. They were well trained, but they were not prepared for this. The fear, the anger, they had come to neutralize him. They had come to destroy a dog. But they couldn't destroy the truth. Rex didn't pause. He could sense the shift in the air, the crowd behind him now standing strong, united in their belief that this fight was for something more than just survival. This was for equality, for freedom, and for the undeniable truth that love and loyalty are what truly make us human. The military trucks screeched to a halt, and the soldiers inside, unsure of what to do, looked to their commander. He was silent for a moment, watching the growing crowd that had gathered to protect Rex. The final choice. As the commander stepped out of his vehicle, he called into his radio, ordering the shutdown of all operations. He had been given the order to eliminate Rex, to destroy him for what he represented, but looking at the civilians standing together, looking at Rex, he hesitated. Rex took a few steps forward, his head high, his body tired but unwavering. His enhanced senses were on alert, but his heart was calmer than it had ever been before. For the first time, he was not running from something. He was standing for something. The commander spoke quietly but firmly. "Stand down. This is over." Rex watched as the soldiers put down their weapons, their resolve faltering. It wasn't just fear of what Rex had become, it was something deeper, something more human. In the end, they knew they couldn't fight for an ideal that didn't even exist. They couldn't destroy something that was real, something they themselves had failed to see until now. A new beginning. Rex turned to the people who had come to stand with him, and in that moment, everything changed. The town erupted in cheers. The battle was over. But more than that, the war had only just begun. The story of Rex, the dog who was more than a machine, would change the world forever. News outlets across the globe picked up the story. Soon, Rex became a symbol, not of defiance, but of hope, loyalty, and the undeniable humanity within all of us. The truth of what he had become, and the love he had for his owner, was now known to the world. The legacy of loyalty. As the months passed, Rex and Tom were reunited. Tom had recovered, thanks to the quick intervention of the civilians who had helped them escape. Together, they moved into a new life, one that would never be the same again. Rex was no longer just an experiment. He was a hero, a symbol of the unbreakable bond between humans and animals, a symbol of the fight for freedom and equality. But it wasn't just the physical journey that had shaped Rex. It was the way he had defined his own purpose through loyalty, sacrifice, and love. He didn't need to be human to show humanity's greatest strengths. He had done it through his actions, his unwavering commitment to Tom, and his ability to fight for a future where he was seen as a living being. The world began to change. Laws were passed to protect sentient beings like Rex, and humanity slowly began to understand that perhaps the line between machine and living creature was not as clear as they once thought. In the end, it was love, that pure, simple emotion, that had saved them all. Love for a man. Love for a dog. And in that love, they found the strength to rise above everything else. Life lesson. As Tom sat with Rex under the stars one evening, the world around them finally at peace, he whispered softly, "I used to think you were just my dog. But now I know, you're the best part of what it means to be human." Rex looked up at him, his amber eyes glowing under the moonlight. He didn't need words to understand. His heart, full of love, was all the language he needed. And together, they knew the truth: being human isn't about being perfect or even being the same. It's about showing love, fighting for what's right, and standing together when it matters most.